A very good evening and welcome to the news tonight, where we get you the day's top stories from India and across the world. I'm Tracy Shilchi, and let's start with the headlines. One of the worst falls ever for the Indian markets. Benchmark Sensex crashes over 1,600 points. Nearly 7 lakh crore investor wealth wiped off. Rupee falls to lowest level of 66.72 to a dollar. Bloodbath in world markets as well. Chinese benchmark Shanghai Composite Index declines 8.5%. Dow plummets 1,000 points minutes after opening. Nasdaq too loses 7.5%. The centre tells the Supreme Court that political parties cannot be brought under the RTI. Argues they are not public authorities set up under Parliament's laws. Italy challenges India's jurisdiction in the Marines case. United Nations Tribunal, though, asks both nations to suspend court proceedings. And Kumar Sangakkara's swan song goes off tune. India beats Sri Lanka in the second test in Colombo by 278 runs, leveled the three-test series 1-1. Our top story this evening: Indian markets crashed on Monday, recording its biggest fall since 2009. Sensex shed over 1,600 points, Nifty over 500, and nearly 7 lakh crore rupees got wiped out from investors in a single-day carnage, all because of sell-off triggered by a global meltdown. Here are more details.
The widespread unrest in markets was set in motion nearly 2 weeks ago when China sharply devalued its currency yuan. But the extent of the Monday mayhem was beyond what was expected. The markets crashed by a whopping 6.22% because of global meltdown in one of the biggest sell-offs in recent years. Sensex nosedived by over 1,740 points during the day and finally closed at 1,625 points down at 26,742. This is the biggest fall that Sensex has seen in 6 years, and it is the third biggest fall ever. The Nifty too fell by over 500 points during the day, but finally closed at 7,809. The trigger for Monday's carnage was the rout in China's equities. Shanghai shares closed 8.75% lower, marking their biggest single-day percentage loss since 2007.
Last week, the Chinese devalued their currency by nearly around 5%, and that has impacted the entire world economy, and particularly in the Southeast Asian. Today there is a total panic in the market. Our Sensex are falling, and therefore this is perhaps the high time that the RBI and the Finance Ministry should be taking review after minute to minute.
To soothe the investors, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley and RBI Chief Raghuram Rajan remained optimistic and allayed fears that there could be more in store.
There is not a single domestic factor in India which has either contributed to it or has added to it. Now, these are external factors. I have not the least doubt that this turbulence is transient and temporary in nature. The markets will settle down.
We have to absorb this volatility, being fairly assured that as far as fundamentals go, the fundamentals of the economy are good, and they will reassert themselves. Eventually, after a certain amount of turmoil, markets reassess fundamentals, and when they do that reassessment, they will see that India is a good place to be. So I feel fairly confident that the turmoil will settle down, and at that point we will be a good investment destination again.
It was the third straight day of big sell-off in Indian stock markets. Stocks across all sectors, including energy, banking, auto, IT, infrastructure and real estate, saw massive selling. All 50 constituents of Nifty were also down. Tata Motors and ONGC were the worst hit, losing over 6% in early trade. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
And on a day when the government said that the Prime Minister is keeping a close watch on the situation, the rupee too slumped to its lowest level since September 2013. RBI Governor Rajan gave an assurance that the central bank would not hesitate to use foreign exchange reserves in order to reduce the currency's volatility. The currency weakened 1.3% against the US dollar today following a global sell-off. But the government and RBI assures that the Indian situation is relatively much better than other countries.
We will have no hesitation in using our reserves when appropriate to reduce volatility in the rupee.
Assurances from the RBI governor amid fears created by a downward spiraling currency. Rajya has said India has enough foreign exchange reserves to cushion the slump in the rupee.
Let me emphasize that we have $355 billion plus another $25 billion in forward purchases that are not required until next year to meet foreign currency FCNR liabilities. So we have approximately $380 billion in reserves to be used as and when the need arises. We will have no hesitation in using our reserves when appropriate to reduce volatility in the rupee.
The rupee slinked to a low of 66.72 against the US dollar during the day before settling at 66.50, its lowest level in 2 years. In the last 4 weeks, the rupee has fallen nearly 4%. But the Reserve Bank of India and the government say the country is in a better position relative to other countries. Even though RBI does not target a specific level for the rupee, it intervenes in forex markets via state-run banks to curb volatility.
Whether it is currency prices or whether it is asset prices, all of these are going to settle down as they adjust to the changes in valuations across the markets. This is part and parcel of the capital markets. We haven't seen anything that would suggest any major breaks or any major dislocations. It is an adjustment process. Obviously, as I said, our goal is to monitor the situation very carefully.
There has been huge selling pressure on the Indian currency since August 11th, when China devalued the yuan. There are also fears that China could be forced to devalue the yuan further should its economy falter. This has led to concerns about a currency war that could prove disastrous for global equity markets. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And world markets too saw a bloodbath on Monday as global sell-off accelerated on worries about China's sinking shares. Oil prices are down as well. The Chinese benchmark Shanghai Composite Index, looking at that, it declined 8.5% today, the biggest one-day loss since the height of the global financial crisis in 2007. The smaller Shenzhen Composite lost 7.7%. All Asian and European markets suffered major losses. But taking at the latest figures, the US stock markets taking a low blow with stocks plunging to a lowest level since last October. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropping a whopping 1,000 points or 6% on opening. The S&P 500 index also opening 100 points or 4.9% lower at 1,874. The benchmark index down more than 10% from its peak that was reached on the 21st of May. The Nasdaq too began the day down 360 points or 7.6% to 4,349. London's FTSE 100 index was 4.8% lower in early trade, with major markets in France and Germany also down. In Japan, Nikkei's share average dropped 4.6% to 18,540, falling below its 200-day moving average for the first time since October. Talking about the Asian currencies, also trading lower against the US dollar, and Russia's ruble fell by 2.5%. Oil, in fact, slumping more than 4% to a new 6-year low to below $39 a barrel.
They will be aiming to stabilise sentiment where possible, and also it's not only sentiment in the equity market, but it's also credit growth. It's also making sure that infrastructure investment holds up, so they're strong enough to offset headwinds from the property structural downturn. So in juggling all those different pieces, trying to stabilise equity market sentiment is just one of a few important priorities, not the only one.
You're seeing concerns over the formation of an interim Greek government weighing on markets. Clearly, the commodity story and the potential for further falls in the price of oil and the disruptive impact that is having on some indebted countries is clearly playing also on markets. And put that together with a slowdown in activity in China, you've got an almost perfect storm of geopolitical events.
All right, for more on this story, we're joined by TK Arun, who's the editor of opinion at The Economic Times. Mr. Arun, thanks so much for joining us. You know, talking about those numbers and a whole lot of that I just went through, it does look quite worrying. But do we actually take faith in what the RBI governor and the finance minister are saying India is relatively doing much better?
Absolutely. Whichever way you look at it, India doesn't really have to be overly troubled over the swings in the stock market. To put it in perspective, this is a 6% fall in the BSE Sensex. But India has experienced far sharper falls in the past. In 1992, it fell by 12%. Subsequently, it was fallen by 11% 2-3 times. So this is, while in terms of absolute numbers, the fall might look really, really big. In terms of percentage of the index, the fall is not all that great. Then in terms of look at the real economy, India still continues to grow at more than 7%, even by conservative estimates. So that is better than the growth rate of almost any other large economy in the world. And the fiscal deficit is under control. Our current account deficit is still less than 1.5% of GDP. Inflation is gradually coming under control. So there really is no major problem with the economic fundamentals of the Indian economy. So in that perspective, as both the finance minister and the RBI governor have said, the fundamentals of the economy will reassert. And I'm sure this particular trouble will blow over.
So are you hopeful that tomorrow perhaps we'll be seeing a little bit of a recovery in the markets, or would this volatility continue for a while, you know, looking at how, of course, the US markets open, which I'm hoping, of course, they are taking cues from the Asian stocks actually this morning.
That is exactly the point.
Yeah.
See, stock markets are not a rational animal. They are driven by panic and greed. So when markets behave like a herd, it is possible that after the cue from Asian stock markets, India might also fall. But how long this turbulence will last, one can't really say.
Yes.
But the point is that it will not last forever. In the Indian Sensex has fallen sharply, and it has risen and climbed higher on the strength of the Indian economy. And this is what will happen in this time around.
All right, but that's one way, of course, of looking at it. We've seen sharper falls. We've, of course, been through worse. But there's also another sentiment, and a lot of critics also saying, you know, this also shows the vulnerability of our economy, or for that matter, even China. You know, for decades, it was at the top, but suddenly, you know, you see a devaluation of the currency, and just look at how it's definitely much weaker than we thought it was. And, you know, how far is India from that?
See, let's understand, China, when it continued to grow at 9%, 10%, and even higher for a long period, that was a path-breaking novel experience in the entire history of human development. You cannot really expect this to sustain forever and just in one country. At some point, China's economic growth had to be led by something other than exports. And that time has come now. The Chinese authorities are aware of this. So in their 12th plan, they plan to shift the driver of the economy from exports and external consumption to domestic consumption. So this rebalancing will take some time. It will take some effort. And during that transition, there could be turbulence. The Chinese economy grows at 7% or even say slightly lower. The Purchasing Managers Index, etc., shows that growth might be even lower than 7%. Still, that is a fabulous amount of additional value that is being created to the global economy. So that will drive a whole lot of growth in other parts of the world, particularly the East Asian countries, which export a whole lot of things to China, and in some commodity exporting countries around the world as well. So while China's growth slowdown is a concern for the world economy, let's also see that growth is reviving in the US. It has ceased to be negative in the European Union. Africa is actually showing some promise. So Latin America is down, but East Asia is also down, particularly compared to the stellar growth it had been used to in the past. But India is still growing at 7%. So overall, the situation is not too bad. And since commodity prices are coming down, it is actually a boost to the Indian economy. It's a boost to our attempts to achieve fiscal discipline.
Yes. Let's look at the bigger picture, is what you're saying. Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Arun, for joining us. You know, and a lot of our viewers, I'm sure, are taking hope from the fact that not just the RBI governor, but also a lot of our guests as well, giving us an idea that this is not the worst that we are seeing, and definitely the picture is going to look better in a few days to come. Thanks so much for joining us. Meanwhile, let's head on to more news. In the government's 10% stake sale in IOC received bids for more than the number of shares on offer. The government will get 9,379 crore rupees from the stake sale. It received bids of over 28.74 crore shares. However, interests of retail investors in the stake sale was down due to the crash that we saw in the stock markets. The IOC share sale is the fourth and the biggest disinvestment this fiscal. Apart from IOC, the government has sold stakes in 3 other PSUs, the PFC, the RSC and the Dredging Corporation, mopping up to over 3,300 crore rupees. The government is targeting to raise around 70,000 crores from disinvestment this fiscal.
Today, if you look at the IOC stock, you should look at what's been happening in the market totally, secondary as well as the IOC, as well as the OFS. That's what I mentioned. It's about 10 to 11 times the normal. So there has been a constant sort of a thing between the sells and the buys. And the price has not really been beaten down so much as many other stocks.
On to other news. And the centre has told the Supreme Court that political parties cannot be brought under the Right to Information Act. On a petition, the government claimed that it would adversely affect their internal working. The government said that the proposal also carries the risk of rivals misusing it to settle political scores. The court had sought response from the centre on a PIL filed by an NGO Association for Democratic Reforms. Advocate Prashant Bhushan, who appeared for the petitioner, claimed that national parties are virtually funded by the state as they are exempted from filing income tax returns.
The Central Information Commission had a detailed hearing in which they heard all these parties, and after that came to the conclusion that political parties are public authorities under the RTI Act because they receive enormous financial benefits from the government. Therefore, people of this country are entitled to know as to what they are doing, whether they are adhering by their constitution. But unfortunately, the central government feels they are, just as they are destroying all institutions of accountability, whether it is Lokpal, CVC, CBI, etc., they want to destroy the RTI Act also.
With that, a quick break here, but still ahead, international news. An Islamic State continues to target ancient sites in Iraq. 2,000-year-old temple is destroyed in Palmyra. Details of that ahead.
Get live Rajya Sabha session. News, views, reports and analysis you can trust on social media. Subscribe, follow, like Rajya Sabha Television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Let's get you more national news. And at least 6 people died and 20 were injured in a train accident in Anantapur district of Andhra Pradesh. The dead included a Congress MLA from Karnataka. 4 bogies of the Bangalore-Nanded Express were derailed after a speeding granite-laden truck rammed into its AC coaches. The brakes of the lorry reportedly failed, which crashed through a barrier to collide with the train. 4-time Lok Sabha MP Congress MLA Venkatesh Nayak from Rajya district of Karnataka was also among those killed. The Railways has ordered an inquiry into the accident.
It's a great loss to the party and also to the state. He's a very sincere and honest politician, and he served the state for more than 40-50 years.
One lorry, filled with stones, broke the manned closed gate and dashed against this train, which resulted in the derailment of 4 coaches.
Now with that, let's take a look at other updates from across the country in Nationwide. The CBI has sought more time from the Supreme Court to take charge of all cases related to the Vyapam scam. The CBI today filed an affidavit and sought 3 more weeks for a handover. However, the Supreme Court has asked the CBI to take over all 212 cases related to the scam. Ex-serviceman Colonel Pushpendra Singh, who was on a hunger strike on the OROP issue, was rushed to hospital after his health deteriorated. He was part of the 8-week-long protest at the Jantar Mantar in Delhi. Despite weakness, the army veteran said that he will continue his hunger strike in the hospital. An Indian Air Force MiG-21 Bison aircraft crashed in Budgam district of Jammu and Kashmir on Monday. The pilot managed to eject safely. The aircraft took off from a Srinagar airfield and was on a routine training sortie. A court of inquiry has been ordered to find the cause of the crash. The flood situation in Assam saw improvement today after rain subsided and water level on key rivers receded. 14 people, though, have died so far in the disaster. Over 8 lakh people are affected. Hundreds of villagers are still stranded waiting for rescue teams. A United Nations tribunal today asked both India and Italy to suspend court proceedings in the 2012 Italian Marines case. It also sought initial reports from both nations by the 24th of September. Italy had taken the matter to the tribunal challenging India's jurisdiction. The two Marines, Massimiliano Rattore and Salvatore Girone, are on trial in India for killing 2 fishermen off the Kerala coast in 2012. Italy claims UN laws grant jurisdiction to the country that owns the ship involved in accidents at sea. However, the UN tribunal did not respond to Italy's request that its Marines should be freed from all restrictions. More international news, and the Islamic State has destroyed the 2,000-year-old temple in the historic ruins of Palmyra city in Syria. The terrorists reportedly detonated large quantities of explosives in the temple of Baal Shemin. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights confirmed the destruction of the temple that was built in 17 AD and said it was destroyed a month ago. The terror group took control of Palmyra in May, sparking fears for the site that is considered one of the ancient world's most important cultural centers. The latest developments come just days after the group beheaded the 82-year-old retired chief archaeologist of Palmyra. With that, let's give you more international news updates in Global Buzz. British Prime Minister David Cameron has ordered MI6 chief to kill or capture IS executioner Mohammed Mzawi, who is popularly known as Jihadi John. The order comes days after he warned to return to the UK to continue beheadings. MI6 has recruited a vast network of agents in Syria, Iraq and Jordan to combat the IS threat. The Lebanese army was deployed in Beirut last night, to quell protests that turned violent. Demonstrations against the government turned violent for a second day, and Prime Minister Tamam Salam threatened to resign as public discontent brought thousands onto the streets. French President François Hollande awarded the Legion of Honor to 3 US citizens and a Briton who disarmed a machine gun-toting attacker on a train on Friday evening. The men tied up Ayoub El-Kazani, who threatened passengers on the high-speed train bound for Paris. The Belgian Prime Minister also attended the ceremony. And on to some cricket action now. In R. Ashwin took 5 wickets to help India notch up a series-leveling 278-run win in the second test against Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's day got off to the worst possible start as they lost a wicket off the first ball in the morning. Ashwin grabbed 5 for 42 as Lanka were bowled out for 134 in their second innings soon after lunch on the 5th day. The hosts lost their last 8 batsmen for just 62 runs. Leg spinner Amit Mishra chipped in with 3 wickets, while fast bowlers Ishant Sharma and Umesh Yadav finished with a wicket each. Virat Kohli's first test victory as captain in 5 matches came in the last international match played by retiring Sri Lankan player Kumar Sangakkara.
I think it's a tremendous effort, to get yourself together, put in the same kind of practice and play the same way again and actually capitalize and improve on that particular situation, that we failed to in the first test. So that shows that the guys are keen to improve, hungry to win, and I think as a captain that's very, very satisfying.
To bounce back like this is wonderful for the team, and we're going to draw a lot of confidence from this game and go out onto the next game with a more clearer mind, more positive, and looking to win a series.
Reigning Asian champion Lalita Shivaji Babbar smashed her own record to qualify for the women's 300-meter steeplechase final at the World Athletics Championships today. Babbar clocked a 9:27.86 to finish 4th in heat number 2 of the event. She cut more than 6 seconds on the clock than her own earlier national record time. Babar was one of the 6 fastest timers outside the top 3 finishers in the heats. 15 runners qualified for the finals that are scheduled for Wednesday. The Maharashtra girl is the first Indian to have qualified for the final of the 300-meter steeplechase event at the world stage. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.